Aloha! Welcome everybody to the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum Education Webinar Series, where we discover and investigate a range of topics including aviation, aeronautic innovation, World War II Pacific theater history, and so much more. My name is William Spincola. I'm the Senior Education Manager here at the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum, and I will be your host today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. Our museum is located in the state of Hawaii on the historic Ford Island, right in the very center of the very famous Pearl Harbor, on the island of Oahu. It is our museum's mission to steward the history of America's first aviation battlefield of World War II. For those of you who are returning to our webinar, mahalo, thank you so much for being with us, and we appreciate your support. We are joined by our friend, Steve Bishop. Steve is a museum docent and historian, and we are excited to have him here today and to be our subject matter expert. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to all of our viewers for making the time to be with us today. Our topic today, we'll get right into it, Emperor's Eagles, Imperial Japanese Navy aircraft at the Pearl Harbor attack. And we are very fortunate at this Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum of ours to have 3 of the 4 aircraft types that were on the Pearl Harbor Air Raid here at the museum. And I know of no other museum in the world that is that's so equipped. And we'll talk about that. You'll get to see some of that as we go forward. So, Steve, tell us a bit about yourself real quick, and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you. Yes. My name is Steve Bishop, and I've been a docent here for about 2 years. I'm actually a retired educator. I was my last stint was 17 years as an elementary school principal. Started teaching actually in Japan, lived in Japan for about 5 years, working in the schools there. After that, moved back to the mainland and taught high school, then moved to middle school, and then finished my career in education as an administrator at the elementary school.
And you have a Japanese language ability as well, as we were talking about before.
I was married in Japan. My wife is from Japan, and so living in Japan, worked on that to learn Japanese the best I could. For a while, worked on the Big Island for Hilton Waikoloa Village as a Japanese service manager over there. Between there, so.
All right, very cool. Again, Steve, thank you so much for being with us. I'm happy to have you on board. So we have just look at this image right here. We have colorized photography. Looks like what those zeros looks like.
Yes.
This one here. So tell us a little bit about the Japanese carrier air group that was on this air raid. How many aircraft carriers were in the raid? How many aircraft? How were they organized? Can you share that with us?
Yes, absolutely. So I like that you mentioned at the beginning that we have 3 of the 4. So the 4th one is kind of an interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
as
too.
Most people don't know.
Yeah.
Focusing on the aircraft carriers, Japan had 5 carrier groups at that time. Each carrier group had 2 aircraft carriers assigned to it. And so what was sent to Pearl Harbor were divisions 1, 2, and 5. And so they had the 6 different carriers. On the total on those carriers were 414 aircraft, broken up into 3 different main types: the Japanese Zero, the Val dive bomber, and 8 multi-level bombers. So.
Okay. And of those 3, which was the newest aircraft that we given? Newest type.
Of those 3 would have been the Zero, the dive bomber, and the torpedo or the Kate. Really, by the middle of the war, were aging out. Zero was their premier fighter of the time and stayed pretty relevant throughout most of the war. It was used. The others were replaced, but the Zero was used quite a bit throughout the war. Of course, toward the middle and end of the war, we discovered its weaknesses and were able to combat the Zero. A very formidable fighter at the early onset of the war.
Outstanding, it was indeed. So 6 aircraft carriers, each, and then there's 3 aircraft carrier divisions you talked about.
Right. So they sent to Pearl Harbor divisions 1, 2, and 5. 1 was the Akagi and the Kaga, and 2 was the Shoryu and the Hiryu.
I have a photograph of them.
And 5 was the Shokaku and the Zuikaku.
And Zuikaku and Shoikaku were new carriers. were they
Yes,
not?
they were newer carriers, and they also had newer flight crews on them.
So less experience.
Yes.
Okay, it's very important to know. But how many aircraft approximately were in each air group?
That I don't have broken up. I have a total. I have the two different waves,
Okay,
and so the first wave was, I believe, 183 aircraft, and the second wave was 167. They were made up of the first wave 49 Cape bombers, and then 51 Val dive bombers, and 43 Zeros. But they were from all the carriers.
right.
They weren't
Right.
just all from one carrier.
Right.
It was a combination of all.
So in each wave, you would have all the valves from the carriers were massed in one group, and then
Yes.
same thing for the Zeros and
Yeah.
Kates.
So the second wave was mainly the Kates from the second wave were from the 5th Division, the Zuikaku and the Shokaku
Okay,
were the Kates in the second wave. The first wave, they were from mainly the Akagi, Nakaga, and the Hidden Shoyu, because those were the more advanced pilots.
oh, very good, very interesting. All right, so again, well planned out. So where then do we know where Division 3 is? Carrier Division 3. You got 1, 2, and 4. Where's Division 3?
Yeah, that I do not know. There were 2, 3, and 4. I'm not sure where they were.
I believe they were the light carriers, and they were probably with the they were with the forces that went to Singapore, Malaya, and the Philippines. So they were covering other Japanese activity that day. Before we get into our primary aircraft, can we talk about our fourth aircraft?
Yes.
That would be the Jake.
The Jake, yes. And so the Jake was a float plane, and it was on their heavy cruisers. And the Jake was made by Aichi. There were 3 major aircraft companies in Japan. There was Mitsubishi, and there was Nakajima, which Nakajima, through the years, became Subaru.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I drive on. Yeah.
Okay. And Aichi began as a small electronics company, watches and things like that. And then they moved into aircraft during the war. After the war, they moved into, which we love in Hawaii, our famous little K trucks.
Is that right?
Yes. And then
Okay.
their division was scooped up by Nissan.
Is that right?
Yes. And
So these companies, like their American counterparts,
Yeah.
exist in the modern world.
Yes. So they used General Motors and Ford that made aircraft at that point in time.
Very good.
So the Jake was a float reconnaissance plane. Similar to the requirements that they asked when they put out the request was they wanted a crew of 3. And Mitsubishi and Nakajima submitted aircraft, but they were not crews of 3. And so theirs never came to fruition. And Aichi, at the onset, Aichi was kind of the outlier, they thought, but ended up being the plane that the Imperial Japanese Navy selected. Crew of 3 on a float. So similar to a Kate
You
configuration.
can kind of see that. Yeah.
It was similar to
And
that.
big pontoons launched from a catapult from a cruiser.
From the cruisers. And then it was a float plane because it couldn't land back on the cruiser.
Right.
So then it would land in the water and use a crane to pick it out back on. So, but similar to a Kate, there was a pilot, and in the middle was a navigator, observer, and radio, and then the rear was the radioman and gunner.
And what was the purpose of the Jake?
Reconnaissance. And so 2 of those took off about an hour before the first wave. And 1 was sent to here at Pearl Harbor to investigate to see if the fleet was here. And another was sent to Maui, to Lahaina Roads. And this was another anchorage area to see if there was anything here.
Yeah, Lahaina Roads was well used by the fleet, and certainly between the world wars, but even in 40 and 41. Imagine if the battleships had been at Lahaina Roads, and they, it's over 50 fathoms deep. It had never been recovered. I mean, even greater catastrophe.
Yeah.
All right. So we do not have, I don't know if we can hear it over our microphones, but we are live here at Pearl Harbor, and colors is being played now as the flag's being brought down for the day. We'll just continue. We do not have the Jake in our collection, but we certainly do have the other 3 aircraft. Matter of fact, that is a photograph of our zero, and we'll talk about it. And want to talk about the zero first?
Yes,
let's talk about the zero first.
first.
All right.
Absolutely.
What can we say about the zero?
Well, the Zero, of course, like I said, was made by Mitsubishi A6M, Mitsubishi Zero. The engine of the Zero, though, was made by Nakajima. So the prototype of the Zero did have a Mitsubishi engine in it, but the Imperial Japanese Navy requested the more powerful Nakajima Sakai engine to be put into that. So Mitsubishi had an engine that was comparable to their engine, but they wanted the Nakajima engine, so they bowed to their wishes and commands and put the Sakai engine in. So
really, so it has a Sakai engine in it. Now, was this a I don't know, is this a Japanese original engine design, or is it based on a previous engine? Or
when we first got one of our first Zeros, they thought it was a Pratt & Whitney engine in there.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was so closely modeled after that.
Wow. Okay.
There were also some components in the radios of the Zero that were American components that had been licensed to them free war.
Absolutely.
And
yeah,
so,
they were the biggest. I believe Japan was the biggest aerospace exporter of American or importer of American equipment. Up until 40 or 41 when the embargoes came on. So that's quite amazing. So there's American components in that in the equipment. That is quite amazing.
Yeah.
All right. What else can we say about the Zero? Here's can you tell which one this is? It's got a it's like a red stripe.
It could be red or blue, since it's one stripe. If it was red, it'd be from the first carrier division, which would be the Akagi. And if it's blue, that would be from the second carrier division, and that would be the Shoryuken. Okay. So the stripes on the plane, the color determined, and the number of stripes, either one or two, determined which carrier they were from.
Right. Visual recognition.
The Division 1 were red stripes, Division 2 were blue stripes, and Division 5 were white stripes.
Okay. And the aircraft were that Imperial Navy gray, like ours?
I'm not sure of all the colors of them. I don't think they were all.
Okay, so different colors.
I mean, ours is
the gray, green gray.
Pistachio.
Yeah.
And that was from ours is from is Division 1. It's actually Nakajima.
We have a TL here. I don't know if that's a zero. I see Alpha 1-101.
Okay, so the A would be Division 1, and the letter after the A is a Roman numeral 1. So that means that would be the Akagi. And then the next digit, the -1, that first digit represents a 0. If it was a vowel, it would be a 2. And if it was a K, it would be a 3.
All right.
And then the last two digits there are random, kind of random, if they're a lower number. Now that's a 0-1, so that means that would be a senior pilot.
All right.
And senior pilots got the lower numbers, basically 0-1 through 5, possibly 6 or 7. After that, they were random. So
okay,
which seems kind of strange.
It does.
Random, but
yeah.
Reserve the lower number for the more experienced pilot.
Excellent markings identify the aircraft, where it is, even in the strike force, and with it on the carrier. Very unlike today's markings, where we want to subdue everything, and so you really can't get any information out of it. There's a lot of information you can glean from this.
Yeah, just from looking at the plane.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, this is from 41 or 42, right? We have the island superstructure of the carrier. It has all the sandbags up on it, which was a very common additional defensive measure. But that's just, there's no armor there. That's just aluminum. Okay, let's see. That's wrong aircraft. I'm sorry. We'll go back to that in a minute. Engine. And 0 here taking off. The kind of rather famous picture, a bunch of them. I guess we can't really tell who these guys are, what group they are. It's hard to tell. That's just that these photographs survived is pretty remarkable. Another group of zeros. Looks like, is that a B down there?
That I think would be an E, because this looks like it's a white
It
stripe.
does look like white stripe.
So the E would be the 5th carrier division, and so that the E, and because it's one stripe, it would be the Shokaku. So you could tell that this ship name would be the chauffeur. Yeah.
And if that's Pearl Harbor, then that's probably the second wave because it's daylight. Right? There's zeros much after the war. Let's see. Oh, here we go. This is a captured zero, so it has an American star on the red disc, and that captured zero is this one here of the Aleutians. So this is the one that was lost in the Aleutians during the Battle of Big Run. I've got D for Delta. It's like a Roman numeral 1, the 1, 0. Then maybe another digit here. You can't tell.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us anything about that one?
Well, I don't know the carrier. That would be, yeah, the D group. I don't know which. Okay, it would be the first carrier of that group. I don't know.
It's
the name of
either
that
3 or 4, group 3
Yeah.
or 4. So in Aleutians, I believe that was the Rojo, the Rohio, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, light carrier that was up there in the Aleutians.
But it would be a 0 because it's a 1, and then the last 2 digits, if that's a lower number, then it would have been a more experienced pilot.
That's how it was found. You see, its fuel tank got popped out very intact, and it was brought back to the mainland, and it was completely put back together and flown. The Navy and the Air Force flew it, and Grumman Aircraft flew it, and then they built the Hellcat to fight it. So that's the famous picture there. Okay, what next? One of these eagles we want to talk about.
Let's dive into the dive bomber, the Val.
Okay. Val coming up. See my Val shakes. All right. Val coming up. So when you're taking off, not the best picture, but looks like an A1 maybe.
Okay. An A1 would be the Akagi. And so you see a 2, which means it's a Val. And the 07, lower number, so possibly a more experienced pilot.
See a bomb here on the
And so the Val had a crew of 2. In the front, you could see the sight for the dive bomber. The pilot would have the sight up there. The rear would be the rear gunner and radio man. The Val had non-retractable landing gear,
fixed
gear on that, which also helped in the dive to slow down
Okay.
the plane in the dive, and you can see that dive flaps as well.
Means the wings in this aircraft are very big, very elliptical, very big.
The wings on the Val actually are similar to the German design.
Is that right?
Yes, the Henkel.
Okay.
And so from that company. So possibly there was some collaboration in there from that beforehand. But the Val was early designed, actually 1936, and it was designed to replace their dive bomber at the time, which was a biplane bomber, the D1A2. And so it was designed to replace that. So it was their first monowing dive bomber. And it was, this Val was also, the engine was not an Aichi, the engine was a Nakajima.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Huh?
Nakajima Hikari. So
Okay.
Hikari is my daughter's Japanese name.
What does that mean?
It means shining light, right?
Shining light,
Yeah,
shining light.
okay. So, depending on the kanji that's used on this. I don't know what was used on it.
Okay.
It's
All right.
probably means shining light.
Right. It's like, yeah.
But later models, they put in a Mitsubishi Kinsei engine. So they, like we did too, they replaced engine,
Right.
modified. We did that with the Mustangs, added different engines for more speed, and as they were developed. But yeah, like I said, crew of 2, pilot was facing forward, and the rear facing gunner navigate facing the rear.
So it's probably over China. See like rice paddies here. Pilot, bomb sight.
So there's not very many valves left in the
No, there's
world.
not.
There's 2 partial remains. One of them is here at the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum. The other one is in the Museum of the Pacific in Fredericksburg, Texas. There is one right now that is being restored, and it's being restored at a museum that I used to live about 30 minutes away from, which is Plains of Fame Museum in California.
In Chino, right?
In Chino, California.
Yes, yeah.
They have also, going back to 0, they have the only all original Flying 0 left in the world, and it has the original Nakajima Sakai engine in it, and they still fly it year. But
Now, our Zero does not have a Nakajima engine.
no, it has a Pratt and Whitney.
Pratt and Whitney.
Like I said, when they first captured one, they thought it was
right.
Pratt and Whitney fits very well into the Zero. So
The first time I saw our Zero was in the Palm Springs Air Museum about 26 years ago, and it was from the Plains of Fame. It came up from there, and at least that's what I was told. So the museum experts can tell me, no, you're wrong. That's not where it was. It's okay. Then I'm mistaken. That wasn't that airplane. But that's what I was told at the time. And now we have it here.
Yeah. So Plains of Fame is in the middle of
restoring
one to flying condition.
That's incredible.
But of course, there aren't enough parts, so many of it, most of it will be remanufactured. Yeah, but
as long as they can reverse engineer it, there's people who can build the plans from the parts, and it can be reverse engineered and then airworthy original part be built. So it won't be, it'll be real parts, just not original.
But they were about 33 feet long. Wingspan was about 47 feet. They were about 12 feet high. Like I said, the later models were the Mitsubishi engine.
And you see that elliptical wing, a very, very distinctive profile. So when you see the photographs of them in dives and everything, it's just unmistakable. Now this one here is a flying one. I gotta imagine this is not the one that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't.
No, it's the one.
That might even be
might be a remake.
A remake, yeah, based on another type of aircraft. So we'll just
during the filming of Tora and stuff, they used
Volties and
B-13s and things like that. They used
so wonderful movie.
Yeah, they modified them because the B-13 has a fixed landing gear as well. So
right, a similar profile. And so the famous picture here, you can see flying with the canopy open. Here, I can't tell what it's like a piece of ordnance there.
Yeah, they carried one 550-pound general purpose bomb. The Japanese called them common bombs. And so it's a 550-pounder. Some of the Kates also carried those in the second wave. So.
Okay, this picture here, you can see with the island on the right side of the carrier or the left side. You can see it's probably this right Chicago. Very good. And backwards zero. Right, so we go to our valve now.
Or
Kate. Maybe Kate. Here she was. Last okay. Carriers. Well, that's an early one, looks like.
Yeah, it's the different markings, so it has the Japanese V.
See it here. But it's a very clean. So obviously it's a low monoplane, clean looking airplane. It's a large aircraft too.
Yeah. So the Nakajima B5N2 Kate, as it was called, we gave Japanese bombers female code names, and we gave the rest of the planes male code names. So I'm sure what that says about men and women.
Betty,
we're not going to get into that.
That's more dangerous.
But it was, like I said, a crew of 3, similar to the Jake. These were requests were ordered by 1935. So this is an older plane, torpedo bomber, and it was again to replace their current torpedo bomber at that time, which was a biplane, and it was the Gene. So I think it was replacing. And this was their first all-metal low-wing torpedo bomber. So this is how we're moving from the biplane age into the monoplane.
In all aluminum. Yeah. So the gears retract.
Retractable landing. Yeah. Crew 3, a pilot, bombardier, navigator, and radio man.
And here's ours.
Yes. And so our plane is very special, one of 2 on display in the world. And people are surprised when they look at it when I tell them this is the most complete
one in the world.
Yeah. As the other one's in a collection in England. It's just basically the cockpit and canopy. But other people, people are surprised here at the museum when they come and I tell them that this Kate was never shot down and never crashed either.
So, it was destroyed on the ground.
So it was on the island of New Britain, the north tip of the island. And as the war came to an end, they surrendered to the Australians at Jaconac Bay. The Australians were moving onto other islands, and this one was having engine trouble, was left behind. And so then jungle grew over and around it and through it. And scavenger hunters picked to pieces the parts, and over the years she was left in this condition. So
there she is. Very, very, very impressive. Now we have the other wingtip, and recently we did something with that wingtip.
yeah, so this wingtip was removed, sent to a company, and they manufactured the left wing. So we have a manufactured copy of the other wingtip.
So folks can see what a whole intact
Scale.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, the wingtip's folded because it was a carrier-based
Right.
plane as well, and so it needed to fold to be able to fit on the carrier for space and elevators. But it was about 33 feet long, and it was about wingspan of about 50 feet. Again, a height of about 12 feet.
And we have also a museum, the bomb site.
The bomb site, yes. That was used in the Kate, Type 97.
And this would have been in the second position in the
Bombardier Navigator Observer seat, which was the middle seat. In the back, the rear seat would be the radio man, and they had a gun on the back.
This is one of the Kates that was pulled out of Pearl Harbor. And that's what you can see the wheels up in here, and it's fairly intact, but that came out of Pearl Harbor. So that's part of the salvage in these after the attack. There's a great picture here. It's a pretty looking airplane.
Yeah.
Big wing. It looks fast for such a large aircraft.
Its maximum speed was about 235 miles per hour.
So for the time,
Yeah.
right, for a bomber, right?
But when we get to the attack portion of the discussion, we'll talk about the speed of the Kate compared to the others. So
you see over here, it's another. But I can't. This is probably later in the war. I don't see it.
the markings.
It looks like that's probably a reverse picture, right? It's probably an E and a 352.
Well, it doesn't have a stripe, so it's probably been part of the Pearl Harbor.
Okay, that's
later.
later.
Had a stripe,
Later.
yeah, either red or blue or white stripes. There have been different markings that changed later.
Well, that's definitely us because they're over Florida Island. I can't see any markings.
Not either, yeah.
Okay.
So we have two stripes, possibly white. Is that a letter E? I guess.
Yeah, I think so. And
So
E.
in E, so it's be the 5th Carrier Division, and the two stripes would mean the Zuyka.
And then below numbers like a 07.
3 would be the means of Kate, and the 07 low number. So possibly a
Or senior pilot.
more senior pilot.
Famous picture of launching from here.
Torpedo. So the torpedoes on the Kate were modified for Pearl Harbor by adding wooden fins to the sides to keep them running shallow. This is some techniques and ideas they actually learned from the British earlier in the war, who attacked an Italian port Trento, and took that information back to Kagoshima Bay, which has similar depth to Pearl Harbor, and that's where they practiced and modified at Kagoshima Bay in Japan, and came up with their tactics, coming in very low and using those wood fins to keep the torpedoes from ending up in the mud on the bottom.
Very good. When nobody thought they could do that. Before that, American and Japanese pilots thought they could not do an aerial torpedo attack in the harbor, right? They also, with their tactics, they slowed the airplane down. As I'm varying in real fast, they slowed it down as well. So very impressive. There we go. Here's with the large bomb.
Yeah, so these carried in the first wave, there were 49, were actually 50, but one of them had engine problems and went back right away. So 49 made it to Pearl Harbor that were carrying these armor-piercing bombs. And so they had a hardened steel tip with a delayed spinner fuse on the back. And so these were designed to be dropped from high altitude, from 10,000 feet, to try and pierce through the decks of the battleships and into the interior. And then the delayed spinner would stop and explode on the interior of the ship.
In fact, the penetrator is a 16-inch tungsten penetrator from a battleship projectile, and they built the bomb behind it. They're very, very ingenious. But that's what destroyed the Arizona. I can't see the tail numbers here. I don't want to hazard what that looks like. A B or a D. I don't know if that's what the part numbers, but This is definitely later in the war, though, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's the insignia of the Katakana crew. So it wasn't part of the same insignia for the Pearl Harbor attack. Did not use that. So that's
Okay.
Katakana crew 320.
Torpedo. That's our very famous photograph from a Leica camera from our Japanese naval aviator.
Yeah. So here you can see these are explosions coming here. So those would have been torpedoes.
Of water.
Yeah, gauges of water.
So
Torpedoes.
that's a Kate then, right? So drop that torpedo. That's a Kate. Here's another one here coming in. Hangar 6 burning.
So they would have come down this lock, the southeast lock, coming low to hit Battleship Row. You have the Nevada, you have the Arizona, the Vestal, you have the Tennessee and the West Virginia, and you have the Maryland and the Oklahoma and the California lined up there. So as they came down that southeast lock, straight shot into the Oklahoma, which unfortunately took the brunt of the attack.
And she capsized.
Capsized.
And this is early in the attack because the Arizona is intact. There's no smoke. In fact, I don't see any burning oil anywhere.
Yeah.
Just a torpedo hit. So this is very early in the attack. See the Utah down here.
So it is hit. So
Yeah.
that was the first thing was
Yeah.
the Utah was hit on this side of the island over here.
It's like she's ready to
Yeah.
capsize.
Not supposed to be a target. And we can talk later. There's
Yeah,
we talk about some of the mistakes that were
Let's
made.
kind of talk about that now. Let's keep checking our time. So let's talk about that. What are some of the mistakes?
Well, we think about the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was a very well orchestrated. I don't want to take away from that. Very well orchestrated attack and caused much damage to us. But Japanese are meticulous, for planning and knowing that, and living in Japan, and working in Japan, meticulous on their meetings and organization.
Right.
But with that, it actually didn't go completely as planned. There were some things that didn't go as they planned. So right off from the beginning was who should be going in first. And so Mitsuo Fuchida was the leader of the flight crew, and he was in a Kate. He was the leader in a Kate. And so it was his job to determine if this was a surprise attack or not a surprise attack. And if it was a surprise attack, there was a specific plan and order of who was to go in. And so as he came across over to Pearl Harbor, he saw that it was a surprise attack. It wasn't, anti-aircraft fire at him.
No fighters in the air.
No fighters in the air. And so he was supposed to fire off one green flare to signify a
surprise
attack.
Surprise
and also send back a message to the ships of tapping out full. Okay. And we can get into that
Right,
later.
yeah.
But anyway, so he fired off one flare, but noticed that some of the planes, the Zeros, were not, it seemed like they didn't see it. They weren't in the right position.
Responding.
They weren't responding. And so he thought maybe they didn't see that. And so he decided to fire off a second green flare. When he did that, the valves saw that there were two.
That's it. So now it's our.
Yeah. And so if it was a surprise, the Kates were supposed to come in first because they were the larger, slower torpedo bombers. And so they wanted to give them the advantage of surprise and not have as much anti-aircraft fire on them.
Makes sense.
But when the Kates saw the second flare, they thought it was not a, and so they came in first. And the Kates actually came in first, hitting Hangar 6 here.
Oh, the valves. So the valves.
The valves
came in first, and the Kate's backed up.
And came in, taking out Hangar 6. So
why were they so interested in Hangar 6?
So that's a good question. So Hangar 6 is where we kept these reconnaissance planes, seaplanes called PBY Catalina. And so they were large reconnaissance seaplanes. They would land in the harbor, and Hangar 6 was right at the edge of the island, and it was right around where the boat ramps were. So they pulled up the boat ramps and serviced them in Hangar 6.
The Japanese didn't want those long-range overwater patrol bombers.
If those got up in the air, they had such a long flight range, they knew that they would find the location of the fleet, and they would be ready to a location that we could possibly have a counterattack against the Kido Battalions.
So the valves went in, but then the Kates obviously are going in also. So that was a potential really big foul up, but
it seemed to work for them. I don't think it caused any problems. But that was one of the mistakes. So Another mistake is over here talking
Yeah.
about the Utah.
So why was the Utah, which was a battleship, but had been converted into a target training ship for gunnery training, and why did they take it out?
Yeah. And so, like you said, the Utah was originally not supposed to be a target. They were looking for aircraft carriers on this side of the island. The Utah was, as you said, a World War I battleship that had been de-armed after after the treaties of in World War I to balance out the number of ships. And so it was sitting there. The planes, that group of 8 came down. There's a lot of speculation on it. There were wood planks on the deck that was because it was being used for dropping inert bombs on there to protect the deck, and possibly the sun shining off of that. They thought that was the wood deck of a carrier. For some reason, they misidentified it, sent torpedoes into the Utah, and she was hit and capsized and sunk
Very, very rapidly as well.
down 58.
Any other issues at this point we can talk about? Like the third wave, we always talk about the infamous third wave. So both waves come through. It's spectacularly successful. They recover back on their carriers. And it's still daylight.
Yeah.
So why don't they launch a third attack?
The third wave, again, there's speculation on that as well. Probably the most common belief is that 2 reasons. One, that the casualties of the first wave were only 9 planes lost. The second wave, 20. And so they thought maybe the third wave there'd be ratio exponentially more as the Americans got ammunition to the guns and got prepared for that. But I think one of the biggest factors is the aircraft carriers that were not here. They did not know where they were, and sitting out there waiting for another flight crew group to come return would leave them stuck out there in possibly sitting ducks. Not knowing where those carriers were, where they were coming from, would be something. And they definitely wanted to protect the Kido Butai, as on its return trip back to Japan, it still had a mission. Part of that carrier group broke off on December 15th and attacked Wake Island on the way back. So those were some of it.
And then ultimately, it would within weeks it would swing out to the Indian Ocean and just eviscerate the Royal Navy out there, and so they had plans for it.
Before we go on, a couple more mistakes. Another mistake that during the second wave that I think the first wave seemed to be very orchestrated, in that each plane area had a designation and a mission to hit. Okay,
so they had targets to
targets to hit. The 8s had targets to hit. The Vals had targets to hit. The Zeros were escorting bombers and strafing and things like that. The second wave seemed to be a little more erratic in my research on that. So in the second wave, the Kates from the Division 5, the Shokaku and the Zuikaku, they were less experienced pilots, and they were carrying general purpose, the 500 Japanese, what they call the common bomb. They were sent to Wheeler and to Kaneohe, and sent to those
to suppress air defense, keep aircraft on the ground.
Take out aircraft, take out runways, take out buildings, things like that. And so mainly, and Zeros were sent also down to Kaneohe and Velos, most of them. And so mainly Vals were coming in on the second wave. And they seem, the research that I said it's looked up, it seems to be that they were less organized, and they kind of just all in groups of smaller 2 or 3 or groups of planes targeted what they saw.
So targets of opportunity.
Opportunity. One of those was the USS Nevada. And so the Nevada was way up here. She'd been hit by 1 torpedo, but had cut her ropes and had two boilers up and heads of steam, and was trying to make its way out. As it got to right about there in front of Dock 1010 and the shipyards, the second wave Vals were approaching. 27 Vals targeted the Nevada. Now the Vals were carrying general purpose common bombs, which weren't designed to break through the decks of battleships, so that wasn't their target. But they did hit it. 6 of those made contact with the Nevada and did cause some substantial damage after all. And so the Nevada ended up being beached there at Hospital Point.
Which is over this way, out the channel.
But just the feel, the research and the feel was that it was a little less organized, more like smaller groups, just like you said, targets of opportunity. So missing out on hitting some important areas, which possibly the third wave would have hit, which we talked about, the shipyards, and the oil fields that were not touched.
Right. You can see the above ground oil storage, fuel storage facility. And of course, Red Hills back there in the background, which was a secret then under construction for that matter. We are right here. This is the ops building, so we are right here in this building right now as we're talking. And is there anything else you can share with us about the air groups in their attack?
Yeah. Well, and talking again about the mistakes and things like 40% of the torpedoes were focused on the Oklahoma and the West Virginia. So the spread of their torpedoes
Was extremely limited.
Yes. Again, maybe just excitement, or they see this big ship, and so that was one of the things. And then lastly, the statements by Admiral Nimitz once he took over of the Pacific Fleet, did a tour of that, was asked him, "What do you think?" And he said, the Japanese made, in his opinion, he saw right away they made 3 mistakes. He said, one, attacking on a Sunday, which we always thought was a plan of theirs because tactical, but he said that this meant that the majority of the ships and sailors were on leave and on shore. And so he said, if these had been shut, if they had been lured out to the deeper ocean and sunk, we would have lost. He said 38,000 instead of 3,800.
Right. So the loss of life was limited accordingly.
And then he said the over focus on the battleships that were sunk in shallow waters, and because they're in the harbor, it's shallow, we were able to bring them up. We brought up 21 ships sunk or damaged, and we were able to restore all of them by 1944, except the 3, the Utah, the Oklahoma, and Arizona. And so by being able to bring those back up in the shallow water. And then, like we just talked about, not taking out the fuel supply. He said all the Park Pacific fuel was in above ground tanks here at Pearl Harbor. That would have been detrimental at those points. So
yeah, absolutely. I could see that. It is interesting. Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
At the time, but 40% of torpedoes just right here. That is amazing. And so they had to do their own after action review and kind of figure out what it was that they saw and what they did. You would think absolutely. Okay. Now for with these what ifs, we said before if the fleet was at Lahaina Roads. Oh. Yeah,
deeper water.
It all over it. Yeah, absolutely. Just the sun. Absolutely. Well, with the fleet, okay, it's the aircraft recover and they hit a wake on the way back home. Did the Japanese the 6 carrier, we talked about those 3 carrier groups, they stay organized this way? Do they stay organized in this way?
I'm not sure. I know once we got to Midway, there was changes.
Right.
And so, yes.
But then, we can talk that. So these are the same carriers -2, right, that were at Midway. And we have some questions. New questions? Yeah, sure. Have those questions sent to us, and then we'll not have a pregnant pause. That's all good. Well, while we're waiting for questions, let's go back to our aircraft itself.
Okay.
What was the top speed of the Zero?
The top speed of the Zero was 326 miles per hour.
That's very fast.
Yeah.
And a high rate of roll as well.
Yes.
And how many fighters then did they have in the attack? You gave us some numbers in the beginning.
Yeah, there were 79 Zeros in the attack.
And then there was aircraft that were left behind to do combat air patrol over the.
So there were these were the totals. So there were 79 Zeros, 131, and 143 Ks. 131 is about 1,000, 143 Ks. So the first wave though was 183 aircraft. So 414 total aircraft, 350 used in the attack. So the remaining were left behind to protect the fleet.
Okay. All right.
So
okay, very good. And then how many were shot down? You gave that number.
Yes. So in the first wave, there were 9 aircraft shot down. Japanese aircraft shot down. In the second wave, 20. So
29 aircraft altogether. We know that some of them were shot down by the Army Air Force that got in the air, but the majority were shot down by anti-aircraft fire. And you think, again, it was a surprise attack. we get that, but Americans were able to react pretty quickly then, to begin firing back and take down that many of the enemy aircraft.
Some of the things that did slow them down, though, was, we did not think there was going to be an air attack. We were worried about local saboteurs.
Right.
And so, the famous thing is that the airplanes were put out in groups and lines up.
Right.
But also ammunition was locked up.
Right.
And so to keep it secure and safe.
Right.
And so now you have an attack, they're having to go find keys or break it open
right.
and get the ammunition to get to the guns. And so
Right.
those were
The guns
things.
it wasn't like they were ready. We weren't expecting an attack here. I think that's always the issue. Well, it's definitely the Japanese in a very short time developed this plan to attack Pearl Harbor. Obviously, their pilots were extremely skilled and professional from across the board without a doubt. Here's a question: did the Japanese change the numbers on the aircraft after the carrier losses at Midway?
That I don't know. I know at Midway it got confusing because I think there were still aircraft. I think there were still aircraft at Midway that had Pearl Harbor markings. But then as carriers were lost, planes were landing on different carriers and things again, it's got mixed up. So
yeah. So then, right. So at Pearl C, 2 carriers are withdrawn. So they attack with 4 at Midway, and then they're all 4 lost. So I have to say that this really tight organization that we've been discussing just got all scrambled as they went forward. That's a good question. And the paint on the Japanese aircraft, were we able to determine anything either before Pearl Harbor or after going forward? They change up the how they would camouflage the aircraft. As we see that green gray on the aircraft, and we see the dark OD green later on.
I know they experimented with a lot of different varieties and colors. And we have some of those examples.
You hear the history. This is obviously late in the war. It looks like OD green.
Yeah.
You see zeros, and this is a fork-tailed twin-engine aircraft I cannot identify. It's like there's a Betty back here, and others, but definitely, so it definitely changes up. And then our own Kate has no paint on it at all. Is that do you think that's because of just time?
I think,
or was it just a silver?
Time. There is some. There's on the bottom of the right wing. There is still some paint from the Japanese Hinomaru, red meatball as they called it back in the day.
Right.
But it doesn't. Yeah, it's hard to see if it had any paint on it at all. So.
The Zero was a great plane. Why did they call it the Zero?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So
here's one right here.
Yeah. The Zero actually ended up was not the original name of it. It was after a name that it adopted. It was called the Zero because of the actual year of the emperor year that was introduced, which was the year 2600, and the emperor year, which was our year 1940.
The Showa Emperor.
So, yeah, so the emperor of 2600, which was 1940, they took the last digit of that year, and that was the Zero. That's how it got.
So when it was adopted, that year was then its nomenclature.
It wasn't its official name. It wasn't the official name. That was the name that people called it.
I see. Well, what was its official name?
The A6M.
The A6M.
A6M.
Not very sexy, right? So the A6M. So then the American press then probably caught on to this Zero nomenclature.
Yeah, the Japanese called it Zero Sen.
They did.
Use it,
they
that
did.
name.
All right.
Yeah, the Japanese use that name as well, or Day Sen. Day means zero as well. Day means zero. So either Day Sen or Zero Sen in Japanese and Sen would be the type or the line, zero line. So they did use that, but it wasn't the official name. It came from the
And then we had a code name. What was its
code name? Was Zeke.
Zeke. Did anybody ever call it the Zeke?
Not as popular as the
Zero. That's just too cool.
Of course, everybody saw any Japanese plane in the air. They all thought it was
Oscars look like Zeeks, right? So they were so appropriate.
Everybody thought everything was a Zero.
The Zero was a great. I thought there was another question. Something about a Wildcat. No, not a question.
We could. talk about
Yeah.
the difference in this, and we do this in the museum.
Yeah, I don't have a
we
well
talked about,
but
you know, how formidable fighter this was, you
Yeah.
know, having 20 millimeter cannons in the wings and 7.7 millimeters in the cowling that would shoot through the propeller. Very lightweight, had long range, and was very maneuverable because the majority of the wing was ailerons that helped it turn. But some of those strengths and made it such a great offensive tool also became weaknesses, and once we discovered that.
it's light construction.
Yeah, it was a light new aluminum covered, zinc covered aluminum of the day. It's very thin, and because to make it light, they had to give some things up, which one of them was the armament to protect the pilot and the engine. There was not armament around there, so those were vital parts that were left unprotected, and so a shot through there, you could take out the pilot and take out the engine. Cannons had combined about 10 seconds of ammunition in them, because cannon ammunition is heavier. It's an exploding bullets there compared to the machine gun, so they had to be frugal and smart in how they used that. The large ailerons made it very agile and maneuverable at lower speeds, under 200 miles.
High speeds really hard.
At high speeds, we found out very difficult. In a high-speed dive, the ailerons were controlled. The stick was cable controlled. It wasn't hydraulically assisted, and so with what's called the P factor, the prop spinning to the right, made the plane want to turn left. So in a high-speed dive, they could turn left, not right. And so we knew if we got them in over 200 miles an hour, they're going to turn left. If you know where they're going to go, you know where to shoot. You know where to shoot and take them out. Yeah.
Very
And
interesting.
so we compare this sometimes in my tours of the museum. I talk about this, and then when I get to the Wildcat, which American pilots love, because basically they're sitting in a iron bathtub, and so they had the protection that the Zero didn't have, and so slower, heavier plane, well more protected. So two different theories,
Right.
You know, greater offensive tool or greater defensive. You know,
And heavier engineering versus lighter engineering.
Yeah.
Another question: which airframe was the favorite of the Imperial Navy pilots to fly?
Oh God.
Did they have a favorite?
I don't know. Probably every pilot flying their
Thought
plane
they
is
were
their
the
favorite,
best.
right? That's
Yeah,
how it is.
that Jake.
I'm sure the sexiest one, of course, is the Zero, right?
Yeah,
most
it's gotta
the
be.
most popular,
It's got to be.
the fastest.
But
the
I
most
gotta give some aloha to the Jake.
Yeah. But you do have to realize that the leader of the war airstrike was Mitsubishi Fuchida, and he was in a cape.
That's true.
So-
Was he flying it?
He was not the pilot.
No, he was
the
not.
senior, but he was not the pilot.
He was an aviator, certainly naval
he
aviator of great
was
great
He was
accomplishment.
the middle seat.
That's right.
Yeah, and the senior crew member wasn't always the pilot in those, and that's a good example.
Yeah, I appreciate that about the Japanese too, because they emphasize leadership, not necessarily
Yeah.
the flying skill, which is important, but you're the leader of this and you're commanding the group. So that's pretty neat. Looks like we have another new question here. How many Japanese aircraft were shot down on December 7th?
29.
29.
Yeah.
And we know that most of them were shot down by anti-aircraft fighter.
And most of them were the second wave.
Second
20
wave.
in the second. Yeah, where we lost, destroyed or damaged up to 350 aircraft in Mars. So
Another new question coming our way. How many torpedoes and how many armor-piercing bombs were used during the attack? Do we have a sense of that?
yes, so there were 40 torpedo bombers that were used in the
So that's
attack.
40 torpedoes then.
Yeah, 40
There's really not that many when you think about it.
No, it's
I
really
mean,
not.
yeah, out of 300 aircraft, I
Yeah.
mean, that's interesting.
And out of those 40, 17 or 16 of those were two ships.
2 ships.
Yeah,
That's remarkable.
yeah. And then the armor-piercing bombs, there were 49 of those.
Those are big 1,000.
Those were the
Big.
1,756 pounds. They were heavy bombs, but they really only had 50 pounds of explosives in them. So
Wow.
they were heavy bombs because that hard
Right.
tip,
The
tip,
tungsten penetrator.
yeah, to penetrate through it. And so 49 of those were dropped. Out of those 49, though, only because it's hard to hit ships from 10,000 feet.
Right.
So out of those 49, 10 of those made connections with ships.
And one did what it was intended
Yeah.
to do, and it destroyed the Arizona.
And
Right.
many of those other ones actually were duds and did not
Did that,
ignite.
yeah, well, so they hit, but
They
used
hit,
it.
but they didn't ignite. Yeah, but the most famous, of course, is the one that hit the Arizona, penetrating down and hitting the forward magazine.
There's the building right behind us.
Yes.
The
Building
the
76.
the 76, the dispensary building. which is now the home of the Center for Excellence for Disaster Preparedness. It's a DoD organization. You go in their courtyard and they have it all beautifully tiled, and it's all marked off where one of those bombs hit and bore like 80 feet into the ground, and then I guess it exploded, but 80 feet into this coral material out there. That's just
incredible. I think that's what saved them. Going so deep and exploded, nobody was killed.
No, the building was damaged.
And that bomb was targeting the USS California, is what they were targeting.
That's the closest.
That was the closest ship
to us.
Right next to Building 76 is where the California was moored. So I'm sure they were targeting.
I'm sure they were. Yeah, and this goes to show you how. And then again, right by that time in the air raid, an aircraft fire is going on, and it's hard to hit their targets. So it looks like we are close to our wrap-up time. I want to thank you so much for being with us. I had a good time talking the story about this. I don't get to see you all every day at the museum, so it's good to see you again and spend the time with us. And to all of our folks that out there watching us, thank you so much for spending the time to watch this webinar and to learn a little bit about the Pearl Harbor attack. You can come and visit us here on famous Florida Island and learn all about this and so much more. There's really super interesting things to see, not only about the Pearl Harbor attack, but the growth of aviation in the years after World War II as well. This is a very special webinar for us today. It's our last. We'll have no more webinars from the education program. Instead, we are moving to podcast. So look in the new year for our Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum education podcast. We're still developing it. It's in its infancy. We have a list of topics we'd like to talk about. We're very excited, but podcast is what we're going to move to next. So we will see you in the new year, 2026, on our podcast. Until then, aloha and hui hou.